1 whole month. It has already been since perks have launched in Overwatch. Now today I'm not doing a fully scripted video, but I want to break down the, I guess, first impressions, but also a lot of potential that I see with this system and things that I think we haven't quite picked up on. Basically, I want to get into more of the nuances of perks that I think might be coming in the future, rather than what we can see right now, right? I think it's really easy to get blinded by, the excitement and the anticipation, and I'm gonna be completely real with you. I've liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I like the perk system overall. I've been having a lot of fun. I mean, the game feels unique. It feels like you're making decisions on the fly, and that is fun. You have to make opportunity costs in the middle of the game, and there's so much you have to do, right? So that is great, and honestly, I've been having a lot of fun. I want to keep playing the game. I want to make that clear before I go into this, because this is not dunking on perks. I don't want to do that. That's not what I mean here. I want to talk about some things that I think could be improved, that I think could be problems in the future, or things that are kind of an issue now that we aren't talking about so much. And yet again, one more time, I like perks. I'm having a lot of fun. This is nitpicking. This is kind of the min-max. This is the optimization. I know a lot of people don't like optimization. They think it's anti-fun. I think for a game that you're going to be playing thousands of hours of, I think the fun is in the optimization, it's in the learning, it's in the strategy. This is what I like, this is what I think is interesting, and that is just kind of like how it exists now. We have to think about perks, and I think making the perk system as fun as possible, as optimized as possible, will only increase enjoyment for everybody across the board. So to start on my very first topic here, let's talk about how not all heroes are made equal. I think we all kind of know that it feels like there are some characters who just have a really good set of perks compared to other characters, like the good ones. And that's really the kind of strange thing here that I think we've all kind of been reeling with. It's like, okay, so these characters are really good. Why do they have the best set of perks? Why do their perks work the best compared to the characters who aren't so good overall? They feel like they're being a little bit left in the dust. And I don't think it's just that they gave all the good perks to the good characters. I mean, like, Junkrat has one of the best perks in the game, in my opinion, with the Riptire one. There are characters that have gotten really good perks, but I think a lot of it comes down to the base kit, right? At the end of the day, you're playing a character who has not been updated or buffed since last season. If they were bad last season, they're probably going to be bad this season, right? I think that with the character kits not being as cohesive or not as well designed, just adding perks on top of that, we've already kind of don't really fix that problem, right? You are going to be playing as the regular version of your character, maybe with an extra buff after a couple minutes for the majority of the match. So just because a character might have a crazy perk as the major, they aren't necessarily going to be as viable or interesting before that, and so it's probably not even worth it to play those characters. I think that a lot of people think that perks could be used to fix a lot of characters, but in my opinion, it kind of might end up making them stuck in those bad designs, right? They aren't instantly changed when you pick a character. You have to build the perk and get up there and pick the right ones. And other characters that are just like regular good to go are going to be better, and they're going to excel in the long run. So I'm also afraid that with these characters that don't quite work as well, in my opinion, with the perks, it makes changing the base hero kit a lot harder. It makes there be more things that you have to worry about, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get changes to some of these characters that, like Mauga or Lifeweaver, or some of these that really are in desperate need of reworks or help, because it's going to be in the perks rather in the character kit, right? So I really, really hope that going forward that they see a lot of these perks that feel like they should just kind of be a part of the character, or perks that change them up in such a way that that would be a much more gratifying gameplay loop, that they end up implementing that into the actual base character and giving them new interesting stuff, keep them up to date with the characters that already work, already have good kits and good perk sets, and then even make their game plan much better in comparison to them. So in my opinion, I really hope that they are actually a little more active when it comes to reworks, because they have a lot of the base and the foundation of some, at least just reworking abilities ready to go with these perks, that they can just kind of slot them into the base kit and replace whatever perk it was with something else that could be interesting and new. I see a lot of potential here, and it's honestly more like guerrilla patching or guerrilla balancing, where you just kind of throw us to the wolves and see, hey, which one is fun, which one is good, and then you figure out which of these is more interesting on a base level to then integrate from there. And maybe in the long run, we're going to get better designed heroes, better reworked heroes more often, because we get to play test them as early as possible, right? We're going to gradually work towards the state that we want them to be in by adding things as we go, rather than waiting for a full rework that may or may not even work in the first place. So in that sense, I think that perks could be a really successful option of making every character in Overwatch better, but I am afraid that it's going to drag, or it's going to take a long time. I'm not sure, right? I don't think any of us can know for now what they're thinking, what they might actually end up doing, what's even reasonable in the time frame. Next, I want to talk about counter-swapping, because I think there is a bit of a disconnect with the community sentiment about it and what actually might be the best option. Now, I think a lot of people kind of assume that perks were designed somewhat to reduce counter-swapping, because you're not going to be getting your perk necessarily all the time. But even though the devs have said that people are counter-swapping less, it's down like 25% or something, I think the larger problem might be that counter-swapping is going to be easier and probably the option that you have to go with in the future. Let me make myself clear, right? When you are locked into a perk set without being able to change it, counter-swapping ends up becoming more essential if you've picked a perk that is like doubling down on something, or kind of like clearly defining what you want to do, right? Counter-swapping is a problem when characters are super niche, and then those niches counter other niches. If you are in a state where you make a choice for your character and build it to go into a niche, that makes you more susceptible for counter-swapping, and you don't have a way to change your game plan around, right? I think ideally, to stop counter-swapping, you design characters that have the means to deal with them, maybe not to 100% effectiveness, but you have the means to deal with your counters and the strategies that counter you. But if you allow these characters to lean more into those niche playstyles, it ends up making counter-swapping worse, in my opinion. And we'll get to it later, but since it's so easy in the later game to just build up perks immediately and then counter-swap into niches that would counter those even harder, then it's part of the problem where later in the game, maybe we just delay the counter-swapping, right? It doesn't happen right away. It doesn't happen just where like you go into spawn, they swap, and then once you die, you swap, and like that's not gonna happen. But I think counter-swapping might be more viable later on in the matches. And that is, I think, a problem. I don't think that you should be able to kind of dead end yourself. I think the point here is that we should be trying to get characters to be the most, and again, I don't want to say like it's homogenizing them, but having ways to counterplay or outplay the things that are good against you, I think is fun, well designed, and you don't have to sacrifice character identity necessarily to get to it. And having these niche characters, and regardless of what role, tank obviously the most, but it's just so hard to properly balance that and like make it fun and fair overall. So I'm just afraid. I'm afraid that doubling down on your game plan will only lead to more counter swapping. So I think we really need to take a look at like which perks actually encourage you to play into certain comps, or minimize the value that certain comps get against you, because those are probably going to be the best, rather than the ones that kind of continue to allow you to do what you were going to do in the first place. You know, there's a couple one. I'm not going to go into like super duper examples, but the one where Doomfist just gets like extra shields, like as a minor perk, like what is even the point of that? It's just making him better, right? And that's a minor perk and it just buffs him. And there's a whole more things like Doomfist, like Power Matrix is way too powerful. That's a whole different thing. But like there's a really big rabbit hole here, right? If Orisa wants to play slow, then she picks the shield, and then you just completely like pick comps that surround it, and Orisa can't play the fast version anymore because the shield is not as effective at taking space as the spear spin. So then, you know what I mean? Like it just kind of goes on and on and on. I don't know if that's going to be the community sentiment, right? I think a lot of people just like getting up to level 3 and not worrying about swapping. A lot of people just like playing one hero, and it makes them playing that one hero easier. But in my opinion, we need to take a look at counterswapping and the design of the perks to kind of limit it. But also to limit counterswapping, I think we really need to take a look at the time that it takes to get perks, because it is super variable and honestly kind of awkward the way that it's implemented now. Basically, it's very slow at the beginning for most heroes, some heroes not so much, but it's slow in the beginning, but then in the middle of the game, it feels like it doesn't really amp up or ramp up because you're kind of like at equal levels, I'm pretty sure, right? So level 1s are fighting against level 1s or whatever, and so you're basically like kind of trading back and forth. The team that's winning will get them a little faster, but typically like the gain is pretty slow. But if you swap to something even in the middle of the game, right, when the other team is like level 1 or like super close to their first one, it still feels like you're going to be trailing behind a lot, which I think is what they were going for, right? That you can't just like completely swap and then get all your perks and get right up to where you should be. You have to like actually take a hit if you want to swap. But then once you get to the late game where everyone has perks, it is incredibly easy with very little downside to just getting all your perks immediately. And again, remember, if you're speccing into things that are like super niche, you can just counter pick them and then get all your perks immediately. And it's almost like there's nothing that they could do, right? In one fight, they're going to be a fully kitted out, you know, Doomfist or Wrecking Ball or something. Those are characters that just build it literally instantly. If you slam a whole team on Wrecking Ball and they have full perks, you will get your perk from 0. I'm not kidding. Like, it is crazy. So I think we definitely need to adjust there. And I think it's fine if the beginning is slow, but I think near the end of the game, the catch up needs to be drastically reduced. I think it is far too easy. I think there is not a lot to it. You actually can just kind of poke and chill and get at least your minor perk before you go in, which some of the minor perks really matter, you know? So yeah, I don't know. I think that kind of helps, like, in, like, what's it called? It kind of helps make that problem worse of the counter swapping, but it also just feels awkward, and it's hard to read at, like, what stage of the game you're going to be getting your perk. The only thing that I find interesting is that, like, since the time to build is, you know, really long, right? It's interesting to kind of pick ones that might like set the tempo, and you might be stuck with a perk that you might not necessarily want the entire game, but you could win a fight with it because you get it first and then you know you're going to have it early, right? So like it might not be as good later in the game, but you can get it now and get like a super big like up, you know, you can get an advantage early. That could be interesting. That could be fun. You know, do you build for long term? Do you build for short term? I think those are interesting choices that you have to make. And there are a lot of interesting things that, you know, happen, but I think that we need to take a look at like the time that it takes. And honestly, with the mid-season coming literally tomorrow, I think, maybe it will be adjusted. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. Right now, I find it to be awkward. I find it to be a little strange. I like what they were going for. I don't know if the initial implementation is perfect. I've talked about optics a little bit, and to be honest with you, it is still super hard to track enemy perks, mainly because some of them are super invisible. Like, there's a couple that are pretty obvious, like when I see Ana's nade bounce twice, well, I go, okay. Or if Ana, you know, nanos herself, that makes a lot of sense. If I take a lot of damage from Ana, a lot of them are from Ana. But like, there's a couple of them that are pretty obvious. Sig just starts floating, Zen starts floating, Doom gets the Matrix that changes how it looks. That's fine. Others are really, really tough to see. I mean, like when characters just reload ammo, how do I know that? Like visually, right? I have to check the scoreboard, try to find them on the scoreboard, then check their perk. The way that perks implement on the scoreboard, I think it does like the minor on the right and the major on the left, which is, it kind of messes with me. I would think that they would just read from left to right, first to second. I don't know. That's just a little UI nitpick, but I really find it hard to identify them, and I wish I could identify them just quickly, easily in the middle of the game, right? If Junker Queen or Torbjorn take the reload perk, the little sound that it makes, that when you take it and you activate it, why can't I hear that? You know what I mean? Then I can kind of understand, oh, okay, so they've reloaded, they've taken that perk. I think more that would just make it so that I don't have to just sit there and study the scoreboard while I'm dead. Because like, when you're dead, you've probably already lost the fight because you didn't know about the perks, right? So later on, sure, you'll be able to figure it out. But like, you didn't know that information when you needed it, because you can't just sit there and like look at the scoreboard. The game is far too fast paced to just get like a one and done like check and then like completely absorb all that information, especially when there's 5 people on the enemy team all picking from 10 options. So I don't know. I wish there was a little more visual, maybe a little more sound, that some of those perks that don't have a complete distinct like way I can see it in the battle, I at least can figure it out through context clues. Because again, you know, I'm not counting Roadhog shots. You know what I mean? There's a couple other examples like that. It's a lot harder to figure it out. But I was always afraid about the optics. I think that the major perks are much better just because they, you know, change your game plan up more often. But that is a bit of a problem, I think. I definitely wouldn't suggest putting like whatever perks they have like above their health bar. That would just make it too busy. Like there's a lot of things that you could do. I think there's a lot that I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a UI designer. I'm not the gameplay designer, but I think there do need to be some tweaks here and there relating to the optics of it, at least. And then my final like ending segment here, let's talk about the future, right? What do I want from perks? I think is the best way to put it. I want more perks with game plan changes. I don't want any perks that just change or just buff you, right? I don't want you to just pick something because it's super passive and easy. I don't care if it's a minor perk. There are minor perks that change your game plan, but a lot of them don't, and I think they're boring. Major perks especially need to be a lot more transformative in my opinion. But I want my game, not necessarily my gameplay, but my game plan, right? I want to have different ways to take engages, to play different fights. I don't need to have a complete reshake of all of them. Like I don't need an Orisa shield on everybody. You know, I'm perfectly content with just like a little bit of an extra hazard leap. That is something that is, even though it's a number change, it kind of opens up the field, lets him do a lot more. That's a game plan change. You have more options. It's pretty minor when you just say it out loud, but it really does shake up what he can do. Like that's a good perk in my opinion. Also because it's like tied to a movement ability. It's not just buffing numbers for the sake of buffing numbers. But also like, I think there need to be a lot more decisions that are direct opportunity cost, right? There's a couple of decisions in the game that are like, you choose between buffing this one way and this another way, like the same ability, right? I think about Echo Duplicate. Both her major perk or minor perks are about duplicate. So then basically it's the devs kind of pushing you into like, we want to put more power into duplicate, but you get to pick the way to do it, right? I think that's really interesting, and I think that's probably one of the best ways to create the perk set for the characters that are already pretty good. They're just like, hey, like we're kind of railroad the perk building, but you can still have, you know, interesting decisions, and I think it'll still buff your game plan one way or another. You know, having two completely separate things is sometimes overwhelming, but having one or the other, sometimes it can just lead to like, this one's always better in this scenario and this one is better than this scenario. That's hard. I think that's really tough to balance, but at least it is like an interesting decision that you have to think about. I think people who don't like the variability of it probably like those sets easier, because I think it's an easier way to kind of slot your thinking into, rather than two completely different, like, basically the butterfly effect tree could go a million different ways compared to like a couple of different options with those. I don't know. I think there's interesting decisions between either of them. I think those are just kind of like the most obvious, like, definite opportunity cost, right? So it depends on like how open the devs want certain character kits to be, right? I think honestly, characters that are super versatile, like your Echo, like your Tracer, like your Sojourn, probably need those more, so that the characters that are a little more niche are allowed to branch out, while the characters that already branch out don't necessarily need it, right? That could be a way to level the playing field. That could be the better way to do it, where a lot of the characters that are very good and versatile just get less options, but more like honed in, rather than the ones who get more transformative ones. They still need to be fun. They still need to change your game plan, obviously, but I don't want them to be like one answer in most situations, right? Because a character, even like, you know, with Echo, there are like pretty obvious choices when you pick which duplicate perk, but you're playing Echo, so you have so many options about how you even play the game that she doesn't need that much of a shakeup compared to a character like Torb or Roadhog or something. So I think that would maybe be the best way overall to get at least like merging the fun gameplay and the idea behind perks with the balance potential that they bring. I think that is the best way to intersect those two, and I think it would lead to a healthier game faster if that is where the philosophy went. Will it? I don't know. I don't think it needs to do that necessarily. I am willing to get, you know, surprise me, you know, like make me go, wow, I didn't think about that. That's smart. You guys make the video game. I don't. I wish I could make a video game. I can't. You guys can. Good for you. You know what I mean? That's what I want to feel, regardless of if it's something I suggested, not that they're listening, but it's something that I said that could happen, or not. I think that's kind of where I want to go. So I guess to end this video, once more, I like them. I'm having fun. I want to play ranked. It's a good time. Later on, I'm going to talk about how I think the loot box thing is going to bite them in the butt when they take away the 10 extra a week, but that will be for a later conversation. This season has been good, has been fun. Next season looks great. We're going to have a new hero and stadium, which I know nothing about. Don't ask me about it. I know nothing. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe while you're at it, but leave me a comment. What are you thinking? We're a month in. What are the best perks? What are the worst perks? What do you think about them in general? Do you hate them? Do you love them? 6v6 is almost here. We're gonna have a lot more to talk about when we try and combine the perks with 6v6. So that's gonna be really interesting. I stream live twitch.tv/LaneHemingway. That's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on YouTube as well. Everything you need to know about me is in my Discord down below. And I think that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching yet again. I'll probably have a patch notes video out this week and maybe a rework video as well. Okay, thank you guys. Peace out. Have a good day.